If you're in your 40s and 50s and are really struggling to lose weight, no matter what you do, or maybe you lose weight and then you gain it all back, then this video is for you. Before embarking on yet another diet or fat loss program or fitness regimen, there is one thing that is really imperative to do in order to lose fat once and for all. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Linda Vizzoli. I'm a nutritional therapist and health coach and senior lecturer at the College of Naturopathic Medicine in London. I help women understand their hormones, restore their vitality, and feel amazing in their body again through simple nutrition and lifestyle shifts, which honor our unique female physiology. So let's dive in. If you're in your 40s and 50s, the chances are that you've spent decades dieting. So, I'm thinking about the 80s and the 90s here. This is where I'm from. I'm 51. So things like the low-fat diets, the low-sugar diets, sugar-free, low-carb, the Atkins diets. We've got Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig. We've got aerobics, running, HIIT, spin, all of these things. Low-carb now, keto, carnivore at the moment as well. So there's all of that, all the things. And most women spend most of their adult lives gaining and losing the same 10 pounds. Maybe you're one of the lucky ones and you actually didn't need to lose weight. You kind of maintained your weight throughout most of your adult life, but then all of a sudden in your 40s and 50s, the weight just starts to pile on. And the strategies that you used before, either eating less, jumping on a diet, doing more exercise, the things that you used in your younger years, in your 20s and 30s, no longer seem to work. And we'll start to blame it on our hormones, especially now there's perimenopause is a big topic. It's on the tip of everyone's tongue. Every sort of symptom that a woman experiences in their 40s and beyond is due to perimenopause. And yes, as I've done a whole other video about it. I will link it below. Whilst there are absolutely some hormonal shifts that happen during this time, and they can impact weight loss, there is one truth really is that the habits that we've been maintaining throughout our 20s and 30s, either it's this sort of like chronic yo-yo dieting, jumping on all these other, on every single fat diet, and then gaining it all back, or maintaining our weight in a way that maybe is not maybe sustainable. Maybe we're like chronically under eating or eating erratically or sort of like binge eating, things like that. These habits will most likely have down-regulated our metabolism, and restricting calories even further at this time is actually going to make things worse. So what we actually need to do if we're looking to lose fat, not necessarily weight, because there's lots of things that have weight, our bones, our muscles, our brain, but if we want to lose fat once and for all at this time, the one thing that we need to focus on before going on another fat loss diet is to restore our metabolism. And there is this sort of preconceived notion that as we get older, our metabolism slows down, and that is one of the reasons why we end up putting on weight and we have all these other symptoms. And there is a little bit of a truth to it, but there are lots of things that we can actually do to restore our metabolism. It doesn't matter what age we are at. I've been doing it in my 50s, and there are some things, certain habits that we have built throughout our 30s, which could have impacted our metabolic rate. And as I said earlier, things like erratic eating, chronic dieting, a lot of stress can downregulate metabolism as well. Thyroid function, all of these things are all interconnected. I'm not going to go into that today, but restoring our metabolism really is the foundation to losing fat once and for all. So what are some signs of lowered metabolic rate? If you're wondering to yourself, like, well, okay, what is it? Is it just, it's not always just weight that is showing up as low metabolic function. There are lots of other signs that you may relate to. So one of the ones that's very obvious is being cold all the time or having cold hands and feet. Think of our metabolism as this furnace, right? It's sort of governed by our thyroid, but if metabolism isn't firing on all cylinders, think of it as a thermostat is just being turned down. So you'll see things slowing down. And one of the things that you'll see turned down is body heat. So cold hands and feet, or being always cold. You need to wear a scarf, for example. I see this a lot sometimes in my classes as well. You might experience digestive issues. So things like constipation, for example, again, things that are slowing down, have turned down. So things aren't moving as quickly as before. Or conversely, they could be moving too fast. So things like, very loose stools, or a lot of bloating and flatulence. Or something that I see a lot as well is things like food intolerances that have come out of nowhere. These are all due to sort of metabolic rate that is downregulated, and digestion is affected. You might experience things like fatigue or very low energy throughout the day, or changes in your skin, your hair, your nails. I see this a lot. A lot of women struggling with hair loss, and then them thinking that they need to take some biotin or some supplement or change their shampoo and things like that. But if you think about it, if our metabolism is really downregulated and our body's trying to conserve energy, that's what it's doing, then, things like having nice hair is not really necessary for survival. So losing hair, I always look at it as a metabolic issue. The body doesn't have enough resources for hair and skin and nails, which are not necessary for survival. So that could be another sign that your metabolism is downregulated. A very obvious one that I see is mood swings, and a lot of things like PMS. Either coming back with a vengeance in your 40s and your 50s, or just being there all the time. Any sort of hormonal dysregulation and perimenopause symptoms. So your cycles going a little bit haywire, or missing cycles, or very heavy periods, things like that. The inability to lose weight, that's one that, we're talking about today. And we usually just blame it on age and that's it, but it's not something inevitable. We can definitely do something about it. Or another one that I see as well is like sleep disturbances. So either the inability to fall asleep, or what I see more often is waking up in the night. So waking up multiple times in the night, even if it's just to go to the toilet and then going back to sleep. Or sometimes I see women waking up in the night to go to the toilet and then just being unable to fall back asleep, or waking up in the night with a racing heart and anxiety and palpitations and things like that. So all of these things are a sign that your metabolic rate is not doing so well, that your metabolism isn't doing great. And this is why we want to focus on restoring metabolic rate first, seeing improvements in these symptoms, and then potentially looking at a caloric deficit, or going on a fat loss diet. So if we jump on yet another diet, we're only going to be making these symptoms worse. So first, we need to restore metabolism. And how do we do this? I'm going to share with you in a second, but really simply is we want to be potentially eating more, and also we want to be looking at building muscle. So why is building muscle important for restoring metabolic function? Well, muscle is actually a metabolically active tissue. It's one of the body's major sites for glucose disposal, particularly after meals. So when we have a lot of muscle, we actually have a larger metabolic sink for glucose, which makes us more insulin sensitive. And so it can improve our insulin sensitivity even without a lot of dramatic weight loss. Muscle also helps to maintain metabolic flexibility. So if we have healthy skeletal muscle, we can switch between using carbohydrates and fat as fuel depending on the activity, our food take, and our energy demands. So when we're looking at weight loss, we really want to be focusing on fat loss rather than weight on the scales, because if we're just losing weight without actually preserving or building muscle mass, then we are going to we can be lighter on the scales, but actually that's going to have an impact on our metabolism. And the more muscle we have, the more we can actually eat as well. So we can actually the better our metabolism is working, the higher the caloric intake can be on a day-to-day basis. And what I see in my practice is actually women who are just eating less and less and less and less, and then they stop putting on weight when they're eating like 1,200 calories a day, or if they eat more than 1,500 calories, which is really low, they actually put on weight, and they kind of blame it on metabolic rate, on the fact that they're aging, but really it's because they don't have enough muscle And combined with lowered metabolic rate from all the things that we talked about before, if we're consistently then reducing our caloric intake to lose weight, and we're just focusing on weight loss, the number on the scales, then that's going to then sort of like bury us deeper into this hole, which will mean that we'll just end up having to eat like fried air or whatever in order to not put on any weight. This is why a lot of women are now being told that resistance training is really important, especially as we get to our 40s and 50s. I mean, if you're doing it before, amazing, but and it's never too late to start. I mean, I started in my late 40s, so it's never too late, and you will see improvements, whatever age you start. So that's one of the reasons, why we want to focus on building muscle. But, it's not just about muscle size, it's about strength as well. Because as we get older, losing strength is not just a fitness problem. It actually can become a health and a mortality problem as well. So research consistently finds that there's an association between greater muscle strength and better survival. And actually, if you have low muscle strength, it's actually associated with higher risks of mortality and adverse health outcomes. But anyways, I digress. I wanted to talk about, when we're looking at restoring metabolic rate, the two main things that we want to be doing is making sure that we're eating enough in order to then also have enough energy to start building muscle if we haven't done it before. And my coach said this to me, and I say it to everybody else, not to all of my clients as well. The body that you want, that toned physique that all women are sort of pining for, has a lot more muscle than you think. And when I embarked on my journey, I was going to the gym regularly. I was doing sort of dumbbell weights, and I was like, I've got muscle. I can feel it underneath, and my coach was like, no, you're under muscle. You need to build a lot more muscle. And we focused on strength. So we had some strength goals that we looked at. So like, deadlifting twice my body weight, that kind of stuff. And we focused on that. And then we then looked at all the other markers, our sleep and, my mood swings, my energy levels, my hair, skin, and nails, my digestion, my hormones, all that kind of stuff in tandem before deciding whether it was a time to do a fat loss phase or not. So let's now look at how do we actually, if we were working together and we wanted to work on restoring metabolic rate before embarking on potential fat loss, how would we go about it? These are the steps that I would take with you. So number one, as always, if you see my videos, it is awareness. So really what we want to be looking at is where are we starting from? So this would be, if you don't know, if you're not tracking your food, you don't know how much you're eating, you think you're eating enough, most often than not, I say this a lot, most women I know and work with and see in general, and I was one of them as well, are inadvertently or purposely under eating or eating really erratically. And so that's going to obviously cause stress to the body. So first and foremost, creating awareness. Where are we starting from? And this, I'm afraid to say, there's no other way around it. You've got to track your food. You've got to track your food for a few days, ideally a week, and see where are we starting from. Am I eating enough throughout the week? Are there big inconsistencies throughout the week, day to day? Are my macros all inconsistent? Am I eating too much fat, not enough protein, not enough carbs, all this kind of stuff? That's really is a starting point to see what am I doing. From there, we then want to calculate our total daily energy expenditure. It's also called TDE. You can find calculators online, very easy. You put in your stats, you put in your activity level, if you're very sedentary or if you go to the gym or things like that, and it'll calculate roughly based on your age and your activity levels, how many calories you need to maintain your current weight. And that's really interesting because a lot of times I do this with my clients and I get them to track their food, and then I calculate that, and then we look at their total daily energy expenditure, and more often than not, they're not even getting to their basal metabolic rate. They're eating less than that, or there's massive swings and things like that, really inconsistent. So calculate your total daily energy expenditure and then work your way up to that at maintenance. And you're like, well, hang on, I don't want to maintain this weight. actually want to lose weight. And yes, I hear you, we're going to get there. But the thing that we want to be doing is we want to eat at maintenance to help, first of all, send that message of abundance to the body. That's going to help with hormones, but also to have enough energy. Energy is like a unit, calories are a unit of energy. They're kind of like our energy currency, right? To be able to go to the gym and smash some workouts in, not the hits or things like that, but actually building muscle with progressive overload. So work up to maintenance slowly. If you're only eating, 1,200 calories a day and your maintenance is 2,000, you might not want to jump that quickly. You might want to do it more slowly. You could work with a coach to see how to do that. When we're working up to our maintenance, we want to be consistent with this. We want to aim to be as consistent as possible throughout the days and the weeks so that so that the body's getting this message that, okay, I'm getting these calories in, this energy every single day. It's consistent. It's not like one day is 2,000, the next day is 3,000, the next day is 500, the next day is 1,100 or whatever it is. Your body's gonna be like, I don't know, is it feast or famine? I have no idea, right? So be as consistent as possible. Tracking your food is the best way to do this. Having meals on repeat is the best way to stay consistent. I talked about it in a previous video, and I'm probably going to do a whole video just on meals on repeat and why that's really important. But just making sure that you are eating at maintenance, and then strength training. So this is not going to the gym and lifting some dumbbells, the same weights, weeks and weeks and months and months. That's what I used to do. I used to go to the gym and lift dumbbell weights, and I thought I was getting stronger, but I just wasn't increasing the weights at all, or the reps. I was doing the same thing over and over and over. So set yourself some strength goals. That's what I did with my coach. She challenged me to be able to deadlift twice my body weight, and I'd never deadlifted before. So this is one of the things that I focused on, starting from basically just using the bar to then deadlifting twice my body weight within about 10 months. So start with those strength training with progressive overload. So every time you go to the gym, you want to be either increasing the weight, gradually of the weight of the exercise that you're doing, and or increasing the reps as well. So that's something that obviously I'm not a personal trainer, so it's I can just give you some general guidelines on the progressive overload. I'm sure there's lots of information about it. So yeah, strength training with progressive overload, and then getting outside. All the other things that we talk about, things like making sure you're spending time outside. That's going to really help with hormonal health, circadian rhythm. It's going to help your sleep at night, moving throughout the day, so not just staying sedentary all day long, except for going to the gym. So getting some steps in, and also prioritizing sleep. Sleep is the most underrated fat loss tool. We burn fat when we're sleeping. So making sure that we're sleeping enough through the night, that we're sleeping through the night as well. And if we're eating enough calories and keeping our stress, the stresses that we have control over, in check, then you'll probably start seeing some changes in your sleep. So what can you expect if you start doing this? So eating enough every day, ensuring you're eating enough calories, but also enough carbohydrates, that you're eating enough protein, that you're keeping an eye on your fats, you're getting outside, you're moving your body, it doesn't have to be crazy, tens of thousands of steps or things like that, but just be mindful of it. And then you're going to the gym and you're really focusing on strength and muscle building versus fat loss. What can you start to see? So as I mentioned earlier, you'll probably start seeing some body composition changes. Maybe you might not see changes on the scale, because when you're putting on muscle, you might actually end up weighing more or weighing the same, but you'll probably start seeing your measurements improve, or, your clothes are a little bit looser, or you're looking in the mirror and you're like, I'm seeing some muscles here that I hadn't seen before, some things popping up. That's, especially if you're starting out with strength training, that is something that's very, very likely you're going to see. If you're struggling with sleep, one of the other things I see a lot of women, when they start eating enough and working on their metabolic rate, they start sleeping better. They either fall asleep easier or they stay asleep through the night. They're not waking up in the night. Hair stops falling out. Mood stabilizes. our libido might increase, our PMS symptoms might decrease as well, our hormones usually start to feel less out of control. You'll probably start seeing that you're able to digest food better. Maybe if you're constipated, you're actually going to the toilet every day, or you're not feeling quite so bloated, or the foods that you were struggling to digest are now easier to digest, for example. When you start focusing on strength versus fat loss, and you start going to the gym and you start challenging yourself and you're actually getting those goals, then when you start lifting heavy and you're able to do it, confidence. There is something about seeing a weight on the floor and being able to lift it that makes you feel like an absolute badass. And this, I think, is something that, the number on the scale can't really do. It's that confidence that starts to come back as well. There's also a little bit of a mindset shift that happens when you then start thinking, God, I feel so good. I'm sleeping through the night. My PMS is gone. My hair is not falling out anymore. I have my libido back. And I feel like an absolute badass when I walk into that gym. Then there is a bit of a mindset shift that happens there as well, where, and I'm not saying that wanting to lose fat is something that we shouldn't want to. We all want to look good, but it starts to kind of go down on the priority list. But anyways, if you do this, and this can take months, it's not something you do for a couple of weeks or 12 weeks. Usually I would say spend about 6 to 8 months at least focusing on strength versus fat loss, focusing on restoring your metabolic rate, making sure that you're eating enough. But after doing that for 6 and 8 months, you still feel like you have body fat that you want to lose, then that might be the time to then focus on going on a caloric restriction. But first of all, we want to make sure that all the metabolic markers are in place, that you're sleeping through the night, all these kind of things. Then we would consider going on potentially on a very short and intentional calorie deficit. So calorie deficits needs to be very targeted. They're usually something like 6 to 12 weeks at the most. They're very specific, and it's very intentional. It's in and out. It's focused. Everything is stricter. So you don't want to be in a caloric deficit and be like, oh, I'm just going to go out and have a glass of wine with my friends, or da da da. You're like in, out. This is it. I'm focused. I'm in the zone for 6 to 12 weeks, and then you want to come out of it. Because the problem, as I said before, a lot of women have been in this caloric deficit for decades, and they're always going lower and lower and lower. This is why we feel like it's impossible to lose weight at this time, because our metabolism is in the toilet. So that's basically it. I hope that you like this format a little bit. I don't know. I thought I'd do it a little bit more off the cuff. I've got some notes written down rather than being more polished. I thought I'd just come in and talk to you about it. If you like this format, please let me know. If not, I can go back to the previous one. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.